Hello. Today we're going to make chicken Milanese with a cucumber and radish salad served with a homemade ranch dressing. Now you might be thinking ranch dressing, I can just buy that. I don't need to make it, but let me tell you, once you've made this, you're going to figure out A, just how easy it is to make, and B, you're going to need to figure out how to get it into your menu routine, as it were, because it's going to be something you're going to make rather often, I believe. When I discovered this recipe, I quickly put it into the rotation, and I'd say, about once a month it's showing up, if not more often. And depending on how much I make, there's always going to be leftovers. So first things first, for the sauce, we're going to need a cup of mayonnaise. I use a half a cup of Greek yogurt, but you can use creme fraiche. I like the tang of Greek yogurt, so I use half a cup of Greek yogurt. You're going to use about half a cup of freshly chopped parsley. Now you can use dry parsley, but the flavor is just not going to be as bright. So just keep that in mind. If you don't have the time or you just don't have any fresh parsley, you can use dried parsley, but you're going to use significantly less, about half if you're going to use dried, because the flavor is much more concentrated. We're going to use about 1/4 cup of buttermilk, which I'm keeping in the fridge until I am ready for it. We're going to use a half a teaspoon of black pepper, half a teaspoon of granulated garlic, and half a teaspoon of granulated onion. And we're going to finish that off with 1.5 tablespoons of soy sauce. Yes, I said soy sauce. That gives it a nice flavor as well. In order to make the actual chicken itself, we've got 3 large chicken breasts, which I've cut in half. You'll see that when we're going through the breading process, for which we will need 3 eggs, approximately a half a cup of panko, maybe a little bit more, or breadcrumbs, whatever you prefer. And I've got flour. There's about 3/4 cup to a cup of flour in here. So again, that's one of those things, just like the panko, depending on how big of surface area you have on your chicken breast, you might need to have some more on hand. And then we have our radishes and our cucumber for a quick salad. Last but not least, I forgot to mention our lemon, which is going in our sauce. And that's going to be 2 tablespoons of lemon that go in the sauce. So you can see sauce stuff over here, less our buttermilk, and then we have our breading for our chicken, and we're going to use some vegetable oil to pan fry the chicken as well. So that is going to be on an as needed basis, so we'll have that ready to go when we start pan frying. So let's get started on the sauce. Our sauce is one of the easiest things to put together, if you have the ingredients on hand, of course. So a little prior planning helps, but let's start with our 1 cup of mayonnaise. You can make your own. It can be store-bought, doesn't matter. So we'll get that in our bowl. It's a full cup. All right, so there's our mayonnaise. Then we have a half a cup of Greek yogurt. Very thick. That adds a nice... It adds protein too, but it also adds a nice tang because it's thicker. It has a lot of protein content. So there we go with that. We're going to need 1/4 cup of buttermilk. So we're going to just reuse our half cup measure and fill it up halfway to get our 1/4 cup of buttermilk. So we'll add that in and scrape that out as well. Waste not, want not. There we go. Spatulas are awesome. There we go. So we've got all of our white ingredients, so to speak, in there. And now we're going to go ahead and add in half a teaspoon of black pepper. You can use white pepper if you want to keep the color, but it's no problem. I don't like a lot of pepper, so I'm just going to do about 4 turns on the pepper mill. And then we're going to put in about half a cup of parsley. I like a lot of parsley, so I do a little bit more. And then 1 tablespoon of fresh lemon juice. You can always adjust that if you want to, after you taste it, just to see if you want a little more brightness, that's what the lemon's going to bring for us. We're going to need 1.5 teaspoons of soy sauce. Let me open that up. But before I do that, I'm going to use my 1/2 teaspoon to do the onion powder and the garlic powder, which are both 1/2 teaspoon each. All right, you can see I'm rather generous with that. And then we'll do our garlic. This is the only time I really don't want to use fresh garlic. It would kind of overpower things. And then we need 1.5 teaspoons or so of our tamari. So again, I'm just going to reuse my 1/2 teaspoon measure. So there's my 1/2, and then 2 more will give me my full teaspoon. Now, after you mix all of this up, you may find that you want to add some more tamari or soy sauce, depending on what you're using. Tamari is brewed soy sauce. It just has less sodium in it. So I'm used to saying tamari at this point in time, but they're both the same thing. All right, so now gently whisk this together. And I know you're like, it's not white like my store-bought ranch dressing. That's okay. These are all natural colors. But you see how, to me, at 1/2 a cup of parsley, I feel like this needs more. But I do have family members who don't like that much parsley, but since I'm not cooking for them today, I'm going to add in what amounts to a full cup of fresh parsley. You see how much more that is? I really love it this way. But that comes from, you know, taking the basic recipe, trying it out a few different ways, and testing it to my, basically, the flavor profile that I enjoy. So we have our sauce ready. Our next step is to go ahead and get our batter station set up, and then we'll go ahead and start frying our chicken, and we'll get our vegetables sliced up, and we'll be ready to go. We're ready to go ahead and bread our chicken and then put it in our pan to cook. And then once we put it in our pan and we've got both sides nicely browned, we're going to place it here on our sheet pan with the rack, and then ultimately, to keep it warm and in some cases to let it finish cooking, we're going to put it into the oven. I have the oven turned on to 325 so that I can go ahead and have that ready to go, because you can't always get everything cooked at the same time, but this way it'll keep those items that I don't cook all the way through, it'll actually finish cooking them, and then those later items can actually go in there and stay warm. So I've got some oil in the pan, and that's heating up. It won't take very long. So we're going to start with the breading. Start with our flour, then our eggs, then our breadcrumbs. And you'll notice I don't have a lot of breadcrumbs, and I'm not going to use all this flour, but it's just easier to get things coated. And I have my extra breadcrumbs just waiting off to the side, because once I'm done with this, I can't reuse it. It's been in contact with raw chicken. So I don't want to waste my breadcrumbs by filling this up too much, because I ultimately have to throw it away. Now, I know people who will take the breading itself, mix it with some, you know, like ricotta cheese or something, and pan fry that, and that'll be something that they finish eating till they use everything up, but I don't do that. So I have to be careful. Now, I'm using a pair of tongs to manage everything, so I keep my hands clean. But if I don't have a pair of tongs ready, I use only one hand for breading, and then I keep the other hand clean to be able to do the cooking. But if you don't want to be left out in the cold, so to speak, and not be able to actually use one hand, just use a pair of tongs or use a fork. This is the only time I actually use a fork when I feel like it's okay and I can pierce it, because it's just about to go get cooked. So I start with one piece. Once I get that one piece in, I put the next one in here. And you see I'm pressing it down, flipping it over, This is going to crisp up really nicely. Make sure that everybody gets, the whole breast gets something on it. Now I'm going to just switch hands, because I'm a righty, to move this over. I'm going to flip this. You see the breading stays on. We'll let that drain off. Okay, and then right into the breadcrumbs, flip. You can see some of that didn't get coated because it was folded. So that piece is ready. So let's get the next one. And I do about 3 pieces at a time in this pan. So I try to have them ready to go all at the same time. Oops, I grabbed 2 pieces there. Let's make sure this gets nice and coated. Some people will do this part in a plastic bag, the actual flour. It's really whatever works for you. Okay, so in order for me to move things on, I either need a place for this guy to go before it goes into the oil, or right into the oil. I like to put it right into the oil. So I'm going to go ahead and move this over. And my oil could have been a little bit hotter on that one, so the next one will be better. It's okay, but the problem with not having your oil hot enough is it will get a bit greasy. So I'm just gonna adjust my flame. It's not bad considering it's already bubbling on the side there, so I'm not worried about that one. We'll get this out. Let that drain. And I'm going to add some more breadcrumbs on top of this now, just so I don't have empty spots. Go ahead and get this guy or gal. All right, and next one right in. And you can see we got nice, good frying going on there. And this will be our last piece for this batch. Flip that over. And over. And right into the oil. So know the cookware you're using, like know how your cookware, what it fits, so that you know how many pieces you can put in at any given time. Right, so we're just going to give that a moment. It doesn't take long when the breasts are nice and thin like this. You can already see that here on the edges it's already turning white. So the thinner parts are actually almost cooked through. And when I say the thinner parts, I mean the very outer edge of this one. But I can also see that the panko itself has turned brown. Okay, and we don't want it to get black. We don't want them to burn. And that's a beautiful browning that we've got there. Okay, I can also see it here on this edge. It might be hard to see from your angle, but you'll start to see it right there. It's starting to turn brown on the edges. And this being, in my case, this is the hottest part of my pan. I know this is going to cook faster. So we're going to give those just another moment or two, and they will not be fully cooked through at the rate that I'm cooking them right now, which is why I'm going to take them, put them here on the sheet pan with the rack, and then put them in the oven. So while I'm doing the next batch, these will cook all the way through in the oven, and the ones that I'm putting in the second batch, I will turn this down just slightly so they'll cook through right here. And that way all the pieces will be ready at the same time. Now, if time isn't a factor, you can adjust that however you wish. Okay, so we flip those over. We're going to give it just another moment or two to finish cooking, get the panko to be nice and crisp. We want that browning because we're not going to get the same kind of browning in the oven for this. That's what the oil is doing for us here. It's giving us that beautiful browning color. right. I think those are almost done. Yeah, I think we're going to get those out. Okay, so I'm just going to move this over just a little bit so you can see what it looks like when I take them out. And we always start with the one we put in first. Well, in this case, I'm going to start with the one I put in first because I know that it's the one that's cooked almost all the way through. We put it right here. The pan allows the fat to drip off. I should say the rack allows the fat to drip off so that everything stays crispy. And because I want this to finish cooking a little bit more, so I get a little more browning, we're going to give that just another moment or two on the hottest part of the pan. So this, like I said, is where knowing your equipment and how it's working makes a big difference. All right, so that's almost done there. See all of those nice little bubbles coming out under there. That's how I know things are looking good. I don't even have to look underneath there to see it. But if you want to, you can. All right, so third piece. And now we're going to just pop this in the oven and we're going to start the next batch. All right, so here's our second batch. I'm a righty, so it's just easier to use my right hand. All right, we'll put our first one in there. Flip it over. And you see this is all getting caked up as opposed to your hand, which would look like a mitten by now. All right, let's get this guy in here. Shake off the excess. And again, it may look like I'm being chintzy with the breadcrumbs, but I don't need that much more to finish this all off. Okay, so this goes in. Next one. Let that drain off. You see, I shake my bowl. It's to bring the panko together, so it's not all spread out over the bowl. And then flip this over. See how it all comes together? All right, next one, right into the pan. Love that sound. And here's our last one. Flip this over. Shake off that excess. Okay, put that right into the bowl. Our egg wash. And you know, you might have been able to get away in this case with just 2 eggs, but I find that when you use 2 eggs, it just kind of depends on the size of the eggs, of the chicken. You might be just that little bit short. So yeah, that's probably a whole egg, to be frank, in this case, but I'd rather have that than not have enough. All right, and that's the last of my panko to get everything in there. So this one's never the prettiest, I have to tell you, as far as scooping up as much of the breadcrumbs as I can. But you see, I didn't waste all that much. All right, so everybody's in there. Turn that down just a little bit because we got a lot of browning going on there at the top, if you can see it. A lot of browning. See, that's almost over browned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this guy up because I know he's fatter. He's thicker. I'm going to move him up into place here where it's thicker. This guy's thicker than this guy. So part of cooking is following your food, like really looking at your food and understanding what's happening. And if you can see what's happening, a lot of times you can make those adjustments as you need to make them. So these are going to finish cooking right here in the pan. And as soon as they're done, I'm going to let them rest and I'm going to get my vegetables ready. So let's go ahead and do that, shall we? right, so let's get our vegetables ready to go. So I have a hand mandolin here. I'm going to move it down. I like these really thin. And I'm going to use what's called a cut glove to protect myself. Because while this comes with a guard, I find it hard to use personally. So I use a cut glove, but I still practice, safety when I'm doing this, especially with small items like this. So you want to make sure you have a good handle on you're holding onto your mandolin, and just gently, and don't go any further than what you're comfortable with. And that's about as comfortable as I get. So you can see these are very thin slices. You can make them even thinner, which I'm going to do in the second round. So you can see how thin they can get. If you want to do this with a knife, you can. All right, so this group is going to be a lot thinner. And go as fast as you can, that's comfortable for you. Set your own pace. Don't go by my pace. And again, you see I don't have all of it there. Now look at the difference between this, which is wafer thin, to this wafer thin. All right, so two different sizes. Okay, both equally delicious. I just like the texture when they're a lot smaller. So I made two different piles there for myself. So when it comes to my cucumber, I'm going to kind of do the same thing. I want them really, really thin. So I've taken the end off of the cucumber, and I'm going to do it on a slight angle because I want the pieces to start getting longer as I cut it. All right, so you can see from my first pieces, this is my last piece, to my first piece, it's starting to get longer. When you're doing this with your knife, this is called cutting on the bias. Right? It looks prettier. I like the way it tastes when I have a bigger piece that's not as thick. Now you can always adjust your angle. See how paper thin that can become? You can also taste it. You can move that off to the side. And then keep cutting. One whole cucumber, a few radishes will definitely serve a minimum of 2 people, depending on how averse your people might be to having a salad like this. But I would say half a long English cucumber per person. So I'm going to do this whole thing, and then when it comes time to utilize the leftovers, I'll just cut a new salad. This is just for this serving. See how nice and long that's gotten? Look at these little ribbons. All right, so we'll just move that over. And we're doing this right before we serve because the cucumber is it's all water. And the earlier you cut it up, the more water it's going to lose, the drier it's going to become. So you want to get this done right. All right, so we'll just finish this off. We'll give ourselves a new spot. And on a hot summer night, this is a really refreshing side to have. And I know that looks like a lot of cucumber, but remember, this is it. You're having cucumbers, chicken, and sauce. That's the entire meal. So I like to make sure that this is fairly substantial by way of salad. All right, there we go. So we have that all ready. Let's go ahead and plate this up so you can see how pretty your plate's going to be with very little effort. All right, let's plate up our food here. Again, sometimes you got to use your fingers to make things look really, really good. So I'm going to take my ribbons here, and you can see how it laid them out for me. You can just fold that over just a little bit. I'm going to strategically insert some of the radish. Okay, and I can add more. I can certainly add a whole lot. Again, adding some radish for color. Okay, so there you have your cucumbers. Okay, so we've got our cucumbers. Let's move this out of the way and we'll get our sauce ready. Next we have our chicken. So I'm using a very small cutting board here, but you'll get the idea. I'm going to take my chicken, my beautiful piece of chicken, and I'm just going to cut straight down. Okay, straight down, or I could just put it on the plate the way it is, but I'm going to cut it. You can see how beautiful that is. Oh, that little bit of breading needs a home, and I can provide that home. I'm using my knife to pick this up. Just fan that out just a little bit. Nice and juicy. It's going to be so good. All right. And then I'm going to add my sauce kind of right down the middle. And by putting it down the middle, I'm giving you the liberty of having it with both. Now, you can certainly put more on there if you'd like. Okay? You can have as much sauce on there as you want to have. But the reality is, balance makes this a great dish. So you see, I lined them up. You can make it a bed. You can make it however you want. But this is a quick and easy dinner that you can make, or lunch or brunch, whatever, wherever you want to serve it. That doesn't take a lot of time to prepare. The sauce can be made ahead. You can have your chicken sliced up, so that it's nice and thin ahead of time. And then all you have to do is bread it, put it into the pan fry, put it in the oven to finish it off, slice up your vegetables, and you're done. So I hope you try this, because that right there, that's delicious.